starting a nonprofit and dreaming of creating big systemic social change with your efforts? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk through a framework that will help you design a nonprofit strategy that will help you disrupt systems, scale, and grow your nonprofit to create large-scale social change. Welcome back. My name is Amber Melanie Smith, and I'm a nonprofit founder and executive director who makes these videos on YouTube to help folks like you who want to make a big difference in the world and might just need a little guidance on the steps to do that. This is one of my favorite topics, so I can't wait to get into this with you. If you are thinking of starting a nonprofit or need a little bit of help developing a sustainable fundraising strategy, I also have some online courses at my website, foundertofulltime.com, that I hope you'll go check out. Finally, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. All right, let's get into this. So this video was inspired by a story that I recently came across on LinkedIn, of all places. This was by George Anders, Senior Editor-at-Large at LinkedIn, and he was telling the story of Habitat for Humanity. Habitat is a large global nonprofit. You have likely heard of it, and when you hear the name Habitat for Humanity, you're probably having this image invoked in your mind of all these volunteers hammering away, building houses, and just doing work like that. You can probably even picture what it looks like in your head when you hear this nonprofit's name. That's some good brand recognition. But anyway, that's a topic in other videos. So what I was really inspired by in this article was, we all know what Habitat's working on. You know, they're literally building houses so that people can afford to live in them. But what you might not realize is that about 10-ish years ago, the senior leadership over at Habitat really examined their strategy and what they were doing and really realigned to take aim at a different way of approaching things to create a bigger, large-scale social change. Habitat's CEO at the time started by asking his staff, how long would it take us at our current pace to build all of the houses that the world needed to basically solve the homelessness and affordable housing crisis? And his staff did all the calculations and came back with the answer. And the answer was that it was going to take 1,030 years to basically meet all of the affordable housing needs. Now, I know as someone who really wants to contribute to creating large-scale social change, and I'm sure this is true of lots of you as well, when you heard that number, you were concerned because that is a really long time to meet all of the needs of the people out there who need housing. And so obviously, so was the leadership of Habitat. They realized that they needed to come up with sort of a new angle, a new way of approaching this, this problem while still maintaining the housing builds, but they had to add something new to their formula. So what they did was they went upstream to take a look at what barriers were preventing this problem from getting solved faster. So they started really researching and understanding that there were policies in place in different nations or regions, or systems that were not quite functioning equitably, or things that basically, if changed, would have a huge ripple effect on the supply of affordable housing across the world. So they started doing things and adding strategies like advocating for policy changes that were preventing women from owning land in Bolivia, or things like investing financially in new ideas for better construction materials in India, stuff like that. Things that once they identified that item and they could work hard and invest in changing that one thing, it would have a big impact. The story goes that since these efforts began, those changes now account for about half of Habitat for Humanity's impact on the affordable housing issue. That's pretty incredible. So obviously, when we are starting a nonprofit and just starting out, we are not going to have the brand recognition or the multi-million-dollar budget of Habitat for Humanity. But there are some things that we can be putting in place at our beginning or growing stages that will put us in a really strong position to create this sort of wide scale social impact down the road. So let's start talking about this framework. And to begin talking about this framework, I want to first start by defining what is systemic change. If this is a phrase you haven't heard before, or you're kind of new to the concept, let's get into this a little bit more. When I talk about this idea of systemic change with people and I explain what it is and how it works, I usually use this example. So there's charity and there's systemic change, and both are important. Charity is someone, let's say John. John is hungry today. So a lot of nonprofits would have a charity approach, and they would, have a meal kitchen or feeding service, something like that. They would get John the food he needs today. But then there's systemic change, which is asking the question, well, why is John and other people in John's same situation, why are they hungry? What are the systems in place that are perpetuating John's hunger every day and preventing him from getting the help that he needs? So some nonprofits tackle it from that side. They might use advocacy or some of the other things we're going to talk about in the framework to basically understand what is keeping John and people like John hungry all the time. How can we stop it so that John is never hungry again? And the thing is, we do need both. Nonprofits do need to tackle both of these things, either at the same time or taking turns doing it, because you don't want John and people like John to be hungry every single day. So they do need that direct service, that support day to day. And then you also want to be working on going upstream and stopping hunger at its source so that we don't have to continuously invest resources in making sure John isn't hungry every single day. So that is systemic change. With that foundation in our pocket, let's get into 5 steps to examine how we can build up a nonprofit that will be poised to create systemic change. Step 1 is super important, and it is define the change. We're talking about really big, complicated issues here that can really make someone's brain hurt just trying to wrap their minds around them. So we've really got to get clear on the change we want to see in the world and that we're going to be working towards. You're going to need to do some research around the issue and take a look at how many resources, whether that's people power or staff hours or people hours, dollars or other resources, it's really honestly going to take to put an end to the problem that you're trying to solve in your community. And you want to do this for your particular geographic service area. So not the whole world, but the specific area that your nonprofit serves, if it's not the whole world. Obviously, this research is going to take some time and some math, and I would highly recommend looking around online, trying to connect to people who might already be doing some of this research. They might have a great formula you can already use because they have also been studying the issue for your local community too. So see what's out there first, research that. And the whole idea here is you want to end up with a statement like Habitat had of it would take us 1,000+ years to meet the affordable housing needs of the world if we kept on doing the exact same thing we're doing at the same pace. But here's the resources it would take or the strategy it would take to cut that down to 500 years or 100 years or 50 years, right? Lots of places have done this. The UN Sustainable Development Goals have done this a little bit too. So take a look at the existing research, localize it for your service area, and then you want to share it with your leadership team. So this could be your nonprofit's board of directors or the volunteer team that you're working with, or if you have staff, it could be your staff, it could be some of your top donors or investors. This is going to have the wonderful effect of unifying them around a compelling, inspiring mission. Working with your team, having this message of what the problem is and the resources that are truly going to be needed to solve it, you can work to refine this with your team, and then you can share it with the public, because a message like that is really going to galvanize support. It's going to educate people on the need. It's going to make it really clear the path to get there, and they're going to want to be donating to your cause, because a clear vision is always very inspiring. Step number 2 is to understand who and or what is connected to the issue you're trying to solve. This is probably part of the research you would be doing in step 1, but here is the reality. Issues do not exist in a silo. Hunger is connected to literacy, and so is employment, and so is homelessness. Everything is interconnected in the systems that we have around the world that are affecting these things. So you want to really understand what are the different levers and different things that are impacting this issue, so that you can know that if an adjacent issue over here, if that were tackled in a different way, that might also have an impact on your issue. So that might become part of your strategy. What you can do is you can create sort of an ecosystem map. It's a visual where you're literally drawing out what the interconnected issues are and who in your local community might be tackling these issues and in what ways. The third step here is to decide what your strategy is going to be. You're going to do this using knowledge of what skills you and your team are bringing to the table, what assets, what resources you might already have to bring to bear to solve the problem you want to solve. And there are sort of 5 main strategies that are linked to creating large-scale social change that I'm going to talk about as part of a framework that was created by the Taproot Foundation, which is a nonprofit that mobilizes people with specific skill sets to help nonprofits. Now I'm going to talk through these 5 strategies that are part of the Taproot Foundation's framework, and you can be thinking to yourself, which one are you best equipped to take on based on your skills, your knowledge, your capacity, the people you have around you, or multiple ones, because when these things are combined, they can often scale your social change even more. Strategy number 1 is to spend your time focusing on finding the bright spots, which is a reference to one of my favorite books, Switch, which I recommend you definitely read. Bright spots is all about finding what's working in the world already. There are millions of very smart people around the world who care about issues and are trying different things. And just like science, they're studying, they're trying things, they're doing experiments, they're learning what's not working, what is working. If you spend your time finding the bright spots, you might find it's more efficient because someone might already have a great solution that's working and might just need to be replicated or scaled to amplify that impact. So that's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is data and insights. And this links to the story that I shared before. It's what Habitat did. They did extensive research to learn how long it would take them to meet the world's affordable housing needs. And they came up with that number of over 1,000 years. And that number was so startling to people that it galvanized them to action. So focusing your time on really making sure that research and the data is known is another strategy to create larger scale social change. The third strategy is focusing on policy shifts. Now, this is when you are tackling a specific rule in an institution, such as a company or a government or some other organization, that if that one rule were changed, it would have a ripple effect on lots of other people and lots of other things. For example, let's say a really large company changed its rule to only work with vendors who are eco-friendly. Well, that would have a pretty astounding impact on lots of other companies, because if that big company is working with 1,000 vendors, then now 1,000 vendors are inspired and influenced to make sure that their products are eco-friendly. So it's finding that thing that if you change it, it's going to change all sorts of other things too. The fourth strategy is public perception and how we can change it. A lot of nonprofits, a lot of activists use this because public perception can influence some of the other things we talked about, such as shifting policy, shifting law, and advocacy. So really helping the public understand an issue better, or understand why they think what they might think about an issue if that is an incorrect line of thinking and helping them find the truth of the matter can have a big influence on social change efforts as well. The fifth strategy talked about that by the Taproot Foundation is disruptive technology. And we all know the power of technology to majorly disrupt things on a large scale. I mean, just look at what's going on with AI right now. Disruptive technology can have a big impact on systems and social change efforts. For example, there was this fire department in California that came up with an app that would alert CPR certified technicians in the area if someone was having an emergency. And the theory was that these technicians would be able to get to the scene where someone was having a problem faster than maybe someone else they needed to dispatch from their headquarters. And it's been working. So that is an example of disruptive technology that is broadening impact and helping people. Okay. So those are the 5 strategies that Taproot Foundation talks about as mechanisms to create social change. So as you're thinking about which one of these or handful of these you want to try, the 4th aspect of this, the 4th step in this process is you've got to partner with others. You've got to find the right partners. So that number 4, finding and inviting the right partners, is all about determining which partners you're going to need based on the strategy that you decided you're going to work on first. Let's say, for example, that you determined you're best suited to work on public perception as a strategy. Well, what kind of partners would be the best fit in that case? Perhaps media organizations, or maybe even other organizations or nonprofits that are tackling the same issue but have a bigger audience than you so that you can reach a larger amount of people. Thinking through things like that. So at this point, you've researched your issue, you have thought about which strategy you want to try, you've started to reach out to some potential partners. Number 5 is you've got to test solutions and scale what works. If ending homelessness were extremely easy, I hope and pray we would have done it already. Things are complicated. Things are hard. There are lots of people and forces at work against each other and moving in different directions. And so it's a lot of work and it can take time. So it's important to test solutions at a small scale, like a scientist would, and really hone in on what works from there, like we talked about with the bright spots strategy. Then you can scale up, you can prove that your strategy is working, and that in turn will bring in more dollars, more supporters, and more resources to scale up that social change. All right, so I would love to hear from you. Is this something that's on your mind? Are you thinking of tackling something that would be part of this sort of large-scale systemic change effort? Share your story in the comments. I always love to hear about people doing that kind of work because I'm just fascinated by it. Like I said before, if you are in the process of starting a nonprofit, you're not sure what the steps are, you need some guidance, or you are working on developing a sustainable fundraising plan, I have my courses at foundertofulltime.com you can check out. I also have a newsletter, the link is below this video, where you can subscribe and get information about the latest trends in social impact in nonprofits, funding opportunities, stuff like that. So you can be sure to subscribe to that and opt out anytime you need to. Finally, I have a group on Facebook called Change the World or Bust. We have 4,500 people in there from around the world who are trying to make an impact in their own ways, and I hope you can join us. That's all I have for you today. Bye.